Are you looking to bring fall flavors to your dinner table? Or maybe you're just looking for a new, easy, and tasty way to prepare your pork chops. I have the perfect solution for you here. These are my maple apple pork chop. Onion, apple, maple, a little Dijon, you can't go wrong. And if you're not in the mood for pork, you could swap it out for chicken, but the pork is delicious. So if you'd like to see how this is done, stick around because it's coming up next. Hello and welcome to my kitchen. My name is Roy. I am a home cook and amateur baker, and I am here on this channel sharing recipes that have helped me to lose over 125 pounds, whether those recipes are mine or someone else's. Although, let's admit it, most of them are mine. But this one is mine, and it is so good, full of fall flavors, you're gonna love it. And what I have for you today is my maple apple pork chops. So good. I came up with this a couple of weeks ago and we love them. So I thought that's gonna be the perfect fall dish to prepare, and it's not too many ingredients. Now, if you are not a fan of apple, which some people are not, you could swap out the apples for pears. Maple pear would be a great pairing. So feel free to change it up. As I always say, play with your food. If there's something you don't like, take it out, swap it, what have you. But let's go over the ingredients. I have here my cooking spray, and here I have 1 pound of center cut pork chops, boneless center cut pork chops. They don't have to be boneless. I just prefer that. It's easier. I don't like working around a bone if I can help it. But you could also use pork loin, pork tenderloin, or you could even use chicken. If you don't have the bites or points, and this isn't many, but if you don't have them, use chicken. Or if you're not a fan of pork, use chicken. But if you are using chicken, what I would do is cut them in half to make cutlets rather than thick chicken breasts. But you could do thick chicken breasts if you want. You just have to cook it a little bit longer. Here I have one of the stars of this show, 1/2 cup of sugar-free maple syrup. And this is the one that I'm using, the Vermont sugar-free low-calorie syrup. It is 0 bites, 0 blue points. I'm on the Healthy Better Balanced plan, which is equivalent to the old WW Blue plan. And those are the bites and points that I give. So for 1/4 cup of this, 0 bites, 0 blue points. So I really do like using this one, and it's got a great flavor. They also have a butter flavored one that comes up the same. So if you want some butter flavoring in there, check that out. I have here 1 medium onion that I have sliced into little strips, and I will show you here in an overhead shot how I cut those. I did do a tutorial a while back on prepping onions, and if you haven't seen that, I will card that here. But really, you just cut from the root to the tip after cutting the tip off, and then cut the root end off, and you have perfectly sliced onion. And you want to cut them in that direction because they will break down more. If you're using them for like a salad or something where you want them to stay intact or don't mind them staying intact, you can cut them across the equator or whatever you call that other direction. But cutting them this way helps them to get more tender, which is what we are looking for. So I have here 2 apples. They are medium to medium large. The size isn't important. You can use as much or as little as you want. That is your call. But I'm using the Gala apples, or Gala if you want to be fancy. And I'm going to be peeling them, and I am going to be slicing them, and I'll show you here because I'm going to do that off camera. I just didn't want to do it beforehand and let them start to get browned. But I did slice them kind of similarly to the onion. So thin little slices. And speaking of them getting brown, I do have here a teaspoon of lemon juice just to toss those in. You're not going to get any lemon flavor from this. You're just going to be keeping the apples from getting brown while you're working on the rest of the dish. I have here 2 teaspoons of parsley, and if it looks a little bit like frozen spinach that's been thawed, that's because I do prep my herbs and all at once, and then I will freeze them until I need them. Because I don't know how many times I have left them in the fridge and gone back and they are all wilty and wet and not at all appealing. And I did do an herb tutorial at one point. I will card that here and link it down below as well. It's just great to have them on hand and you don't have to worry about it. But that is an optional ingredient. You don't have to use the parsley, but it does add a nice bright flavor to it in the end. I have here 1 tablespoon of Dijon mustard. You could use spicy brown, you could use yellow, but that might be a little too acidic, but you could use it. It's fine if that's what your preference is. I have here 2 teaspoons of minced garlic. That would equate to 2 cloves of garlic if you're doing it yourself. I have here half a teaspoon of black pepper, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of dried thyme, and 1 teaspoon of apple pie spice. That might seem like a weird ingredient in a pork dish, but honestly, I will season my pork with apple pie spice, pumpkin pie spice, or gingerbread spice. It gives a great flavor. You'd be surprised. Those aren't just for baking. And I did do a tutorial, surprise, surprise, on holiday spice blends. What I did was the apple pie spice, I did pumpkin pie spice, I did gingerbread spice, and I did poultry seasoning so that you can make your own at home. I will again card that here and link it down below. But if you don't have apple pie spice, you don't want to make any or buy any, you could swap that out for cinnamon, and I might add a little nutmeg to it if you wanted, but cinnamon alone would be fine. All right, so let me get my apples prepped and we will move on. Okay, so my apples are prepped. They are tossed in the lemon juice to keep them from browning. I have my skillet over here with a lid. You want to make sure you have a lid for your skillet, even if it's one of those makeshift things that, you know, the universal lid that you put on, as long as you can cover it. That's all you need to worry about. But I have that heating up over medium-high heat, and I am going to spray it with some cooking spray. And while that's heating up, I am going to take my salt, pepper, and apple pie spice and just combine that together into a little spice blend. And I'm going to sprinkle it over the pork chops. Now, as I've mentioned in other videos, when you are seasoning your meat, you want to do it from up high so that way it distributes more evenly over the meat. If you get in real close like this, you're gonna have like heavier spots than you want. And if you sprinkle from up high, then you won't have that problem. It'll disperse more evenly. So I've got one side. I'm gonna use my knife that I trim these with. I do trim the fat off mine, even though there wasn't a lot, just because I prefer not having any fat, but you don't have to if you don't want to. But I use that to flip them just so I don't have to keep washing my hands. And I'm just gonna season the other side. Any leftover you're gonna hold on to because we are gonna add that into the pan. But I like to pat it in there so that it's sticking, and I will toss it a few times to pick up any spice mix that is on the board. And my pan is nice and hot. So we're going to put this in for about 3 minutes per side. We were really just wanting to get them browned right now. We're not worried about getting them cooked right away because they are going to be going back into the pan later. That sizzle is exactly what you want to hear because that shows that the pan is hot enough. And you just get your pork situated in there. And I'll do 3 minutes this side, flip them 3 minutes the other side, and I'll be back. Okay, so it's been about 6 minutes total. I'm going to remove the pork chops from the pan, and I'm going to turn this down to medium heat and spray it once again because it does look a little dry. Now what I'm going to do is add in the onions, the garlic, the rest of our salt, pepper, and apple cinnamon, as well as our dried thyme. You do want to add dried herbs early in the cooking process so they can rehydrate and give off their flavors. I'm just going to stir this all together. So I'm going to let these cook for about 3 to 4 minutes just until the onions can soften, and I'll be back. All right, so it's been about 3 minutes. What I'm going to do now is add in our apples. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to let these cook for about 3 to 4 minutes and let the apples soften up. Stir that all through. And the reason I did not add the apples in with the onions is because the apples will soften a lot faster than the onions. So this will give the onions a little chance to soften up more, but not overcook the apples. So 3 to 4 minutes, and I'll be back. All right, so it's been about 4 minutes now. The apples have softened a little bit and the onions have softened still more. The reason we don't want the apples to go too much further is because we're now going to add back in the pork chops. So we're just going to make a little bed for those pork chops to sit on, and then just lay the pork chops on top, and any juices that have accumulated on the plate, you want to add those back into the pan because that is some flavor right there. So now what we're going to do is cover the pan, and what we're going to do is let this sit here for about 6 to 10 minutes until the internal temperature of the pork is at 145. So give me a few minutes and I'll be back. Okay, so it's been about 7 minutes. Let me just temp the pork and see where we are at. I'm pretty sure we should be good. Yep, definitely good there. So now what we're going to do is remove the pork once again to a plate. And this is the same plate that I used before, but I did rinse it off under hot water and wiped it down just in case there was still any raw juices there. I'm going to set that aside, and we're going to cover it. This is called tinting. If you ever see in a recipe, tint your meat, your chicken, your whatever. It just means to loosely cover it with foil. That's to do two things. I don't know why I doubled that up. What it's going to do is keep the heat in, but also keep the moisture in. It's going to keep any moisture that would be evaporating into the air and making these dry. So you want to loosely cover that meat with foil. Then we're going to come back over here, and you can see that everything has softened up very nicely. So now we're going to turn up the heat to medium-high once again. We're going to add in our Dijon mustard and our maple syrup. Now, if you're not on a weight loss journey, you could use regular syrup here, or if you're making this for a special occasion and want to splurge, you don't have to use the same things I'm using. But this will definitely keep the bites and points down. And honestly, the only bites and points that you're going to be getting are from the pork. So if you have a little extra big piece of pork, you have the points to spare, go ahead and splurge, because you're not getting any bites or points from this sauce. So now what we're going to do is let this cook down about 5 or 6 minutes just to let it thicken up a little bit. Then I will be back to show you how we finish this up. All right, so it's been just about 5 minutes, just under. But you want to keep an eye on it, and you want to stir this just so that the syrup doesn't start to burn from sitting in one spot for too long. And you also want to monitor it so that it's not getting too dry. And this looks just perfect. So now I'm going to turn off the heat. I'm going to add in my parsley. This parsley will give it a little bit of color to break up all of that brown in there. Just stir that through, and we are done. And if you wanted, you could, even if you're doing this for more like a Christmas dinner or just because you like cranberries, you could cut out some of the apple and put in some cranberries in its place. So that way you'd have an apple cranberry maple. So you have options, play around with it. As I said, you could use pears. That's all there is to it. So now I'm going to take the pork, and if any liquids have come off of the pork, I'm going to add those back into the pan. because again, as I said, that's flavor and moisture. Just going to stir that through. Then I'm going to bring in my decorative little plate over here. And this would be great if you're doing a little dinner party or something. Just going to, hopefully my hands don't shake too much and make a mess of this. But you just want to spread that out a little bit, make a little bed. But you don't want to put it all on here. That looks good. And then we're going to place our pork chops on top. And then top it with the rest of our sauce, our veggies, our little compote here. And then if there's any extra, add it to the ends here so you can still see the pork. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is all there is to it for my maple apple pork chops. These are so good, nice caramelized onions, a little sweetness from the apple and the maple, obviously, and a little tang from the Dijon mustard. So good. I hope you're going to give this a try. Now, as I said, the only bites or points are going to be coming from the pork. So what I did was calculated everything using 4 ounces of pork per portion, and that's center cut pork chops. Center cut, whenever you're dealing with pork, is much leaner, so it's better value for your bites and points. So this makes 4 servings, and each of those servings, based on 4 ounces of pork, is just going to be 3 better balanced bites or Old Blue points. But if you're following calories, the calories per serving for 1 chop and 1/4 of this sauce would be 222 calories. And if you're following macros, the fat would be 5.2 grams. The carbs would be 21.8 grams. The fiber would be 3.3 grams. And the protein would be 22.6 grams for 1 serving of this. But it is a great fall dish. It's a great anytime dish, in my opinion. But definitely has those flavors reminiscent of fall, especially in using the apple pie spice. Now, the recipe for this will be on my blog, of course, and I will link directly to the recipe down in the description box, as well as to the blog itself. I am working on the blog. I only found out about this because Paul told me, my partner Paul, that I could create categories so that if you're looking for dessert or dinner or breakfast or pasta, what have you, I can put in categories. I didn't know that. So I'm working on getting that set up so that it's a little easier to navigate looking for different things. But if you're looking for this, I will have it linked directly in the description box. Also down there is the link to the blog itself, to my Amazon storefront, my Built Bar rewards, my Fetch rewards, and my social media, both my Instagram and 2 Facebook groups that I am part of. So go check out the description box for all sorts of information. And if you wouldn't mind doing the usual like, subscribe, share, comment, and hit the notification bell for the next time I upload any sort of video. Last week I bombarded you all with 3 different videos in as many days. I did my sugar-free cake mix recipe, and then the following day posted my Hawaiian dream cake using that cake mix, and it turned out really great. And then the following day on Sunday, we had a collab for crockpot meals. So go check out those other videos, and also check out the other channels that did the crockpot meals with me. A lot of great meals that you can have ready for you when you get home or when you wake up, because we also have some breakfast crockpot meals in there. But I hope that you will give this a try. We are going to go and enjoy this ourselves right now. So until next time, bye.